You don't need me to tell you that generative AI has changed the state of play for creatives everywhere, and we're still coming to terms with what that means. As workflows adapt, creators in the music industry face hard questions like, in 10 years, will anyone care if their favorite song was made by a person? We'll dig into that question and more from the stage at Web Summit, one of the world's largest tech conferences, hosted this time from the Middle Eastern country of Qatar. I'm Jennifer Strong, and this is Shift.
Now here on the steering column is a device called Auto Cruise. You simply set the speed you want.
Self-driving robo-taxis are already on the road in US cities.
As the disc rotates, a mirror reflects the light in the way that depends on how the signal was recorded.
This is the 100 terabyte. I present to you Electro, the Moto Man. Ladies and gentlemen.
I would say that one of my greatest skills is my ability to interact with humans.
This episode, we explore how music creation and distribution are changing.
Hey everybody, good afternoon. My name is Derek Ali, multi-Grammy award-winning audio engineer turned startup founder, building EngineEars, the first vertical software platform for music professionals.
And I'm Ghazi Shami, CEO and founder of Empire, distributor, publisher, and record label, based in San Francisco, and feel real special to be here in Qatar. I'm from the Middle East, so it feels nice to be home.
All right. I think to really understand how what you're doing is so different within the industry, it helps to even understand what the industry is doing.
I mean, the music industry is it's an inefficient mess currently, right? You know, the tech stack of a music professional is dealing with Dropbox, Cash App, Venmo, QuickBooks, text messages, DMs, right? Just all these slew of different products, right?
For us at Empire, we started off as a supply chain company doing distribution. So we're very much an infrastructure company in an industry that lacks a lot of infrastructure. So we've spent 15 years really like locking down infrastructure and then building creative on top of a strong foundation. And we've brought a different alternative to the artist community than the traditional label model. Different level of transparency, speed in reporting, royalty payments, and then just a different vibe overall culturally in the way we interact with artists. We don't, not really our artists, they're our business partners. So we kind of democratize access and information in a way that hasn't been seen or done before.
Now, you've described Empire as much software company as music company.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you unpack that a little bit? Again, for people who haven't dealt with artists and don't really understand how artists are usually treated, this might be pretty mysterious.
Yeah, a traditional record label is a combination of marketing and A&R work. And then you usually are distributed by somebody, an aggregator, a major label. And so you're not doing any of the back office work. You're really just creating records, putting them out, marketing them, working radio, working tours, so on and so forth. In our system, half of our company is fundamentally sitting inside of the supply chain. So those are the direct deliveries to Spotify, Apple, YouTube. We're doing all the commercial relationships, all the meetings around the world with all the companies from TikTok to Snapchat, Tencent, so on and so forth. So in a traditional label, the CEO really doesn't touch the other side of the business. It's usually the overarching topco. And in our company, we're vertically integrated. So you have a tech stack sitting right next to a creative stack, which makes us very unique and brings a different synergy.
And how about EngineEars? How are you using tech to change the way artists function?
Just providing access. You know, historically, to get access to creators, right? You once would have to sign to a major label, right, to get access to specific resources, right? So, you know, our goal is to create better efficiencies, making the music industry more equitable for everybody by providing those tools, allowing an artist and a music professional to be able to utilize technology to help take their idea from inception all the way to distribution.
I should also note, sorry not to interrupt you, that Empire is one of the early of many investors into EngineEars. It's pretty awesome for us to be on stage together. We're both from California, so to be on the other side of the world and we have a holistic relationship is really dope.
Well, we were talking backstage too. Some of what you're doing, it invests in engineers and helps them not just find work wherever they are,
Right.
and helps people looking for engineers find wherever they are, but you're helping them pick up new skills, things that I think it's a challenge in all industries, but we forget it's a challenge for music too.
Right. I mean, essentially myself, I've built EngineEars for myself, right? As a creative, I spent years and years and years trying to build a name for myself, right? But with that, the industry just provided a lot of friction that was unnecessary. Essentially being able to, start with our beachhead, right? Which is audio engineering, one of the most underrepresented creatives in the music industry, providing them tools, which enables those creatives to onboard their artists to work with them via our platform. Opening up other avenues for us to, stand up other verticals like studio bookings, which we've just launched. Another feature similar to Airbnb, but for recording studios to complete our ecosystem for our platform.
I mean, I think that he said something really important. He said reducing friction.
Yeah.
And I think anywhere that you could reduce friction allows you to create more culture. And I have a mantra in the company, and I would say access creates culture. You inhibit the access, you inhibit the culture. So anytime you reduce friction, you can create a revolving door for culture to expand and to prosper.
Let's talk about your backgrounds and how your personal lives have shaped the work you're doing and the companies you're building.
Yeah, I started my career in 2007 as a self-taught audio engineer. I started my career with Kendrick Lamar. The journey alone has been a process. Trial and error, getting to the point to where Kendrick became the biggest artist in the world, which enabled me to understand where all the holes are in my industry, to be able to then create a solution, right? So I've won multiple Grammys with Kendrick, Pulitzer Awards, all the accolades you can imagine. And because I've seen no solution being created for the music industry, right, I've given up winning Grammys year by year to jump into tech and to be the one to create that solution.
I started making records when I was 14 years old in the early 90s. And then I quickly became a self-taught, engineer and producer, and then spent the latter half of the 90s working in tech. So I jumped into the streaming game like in the late 90s, just before original Napster launched. And then kind of meandered my way through different times in my life, back into engineering and producing, then back into tech. And then somehow, some way in 2010, all those worlds collided together and then Empire was born.
To keep it real, 2011, 2010, one of our first projects with Kendrick Lamar was a project called Section 80, which was distributed through Ghazi and Empire, right? In a full circle moment, being here on stage with the growth of both companies, being able to provide business solutions to creators all around the world now, right? It's a surreal moment.
It's pretty amazing. He mixed that album and we did the marketing and the distribution on the album. And now we're sitting on a stage together.
Time flies.
So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. So what are you doing next? What's next for you both?
I mean, we're just getting started. Again, our goal by providing these business solutions to a niche creator type in the music industry, audio engineers are the conduit to the industry, right? We hold the relationships with the managers, the labels, the artists, the studios, right? So by building these tools for these creators, we're able to kind of build vertically. We want to continue to onboard our users, build the trust through our music, and continue to, disrupt.
As a company, we're very focused on super fandom, and we're also very focused on emerging markets. And both of those things have culture in common, right? So you go to emerging markets where you learn the local culture, you learn the local trends, and then you try to install infrastructure to help them take that culture out via diaspora, right? So like we spent a lot of time in Nigeria, for example, working with a lot of Afrobeat artists. And then you develop the talent locally, it bubbles up locally, and then everybody knows that the Nigerian diaspora is heavy in Europe and heavy in the United States. And so you take that culture and you translate it into other markets, and then you fuel it through super fandom. whether that's digital marketing, touring, any one of a number of different things. And then you kind of rinse and repeat. You go to a new market and try to replicate that. So now we're doing a lot of work in North Africa and the Middle East, and we're doing a lot of work in Southeast Asia. So those are kind of like the things that we're focused on next, is really emerging markets, emerging subscription, emerging monetization tools, looking at things like TikTok, Tencent in China, all the different Korean DSPs from Melon, Flow, Genie, things that a lot of people are not paying attention to, but at any given moment can become very combustive for companies that have primarily Western repertoire.
You know, something else that feels different here is that you're building tools with and for the music community and build artists and creators up instead of just going to go cherry pick the next ones.
We tend to look at artists that we think have their thumb on the pulse of culture. We don't really chase radio or television. We're looking for artists that have real brand affinity, you know, that care about their brand, that care about the relationship to the audience, to the relationship to their fans, and actually understand how to cater to their fandom. I have an artist that came here with me from Atlanta named Moneyman, who has a huge following in the United States. And for many people, he's not even on their radar. And then you look at his streaming numbers, and he's out streaming some of the artists that are all over radio and television because he's built a super fandom. You could just look at the comments, you could look at the engagement, you could look at the streaming numbers. When he launches a tour, you see the reaction in the fans. And these are things that can't be bought. They'd have to be built through culture. And I always tell people, you got to take the stairs, not the elevator, if you want to have long-term success.
And I think, you know, on that note, what Moneyman has built, right? And, you know, along with Ghazi, that's where the industry is headed. Right, you know, you have all these artists creating these super fans. You have these artists building their brands and, you know, doing things that are outpacing major label infrastructures and, you know, providing them with more business solutions and more business tools to allow them to scale their business. Remind you, an independent creator is a small business, right? So why is it that, you know, a lot of these business tools are not created for the creative? You know, and I think that's where the industry is headed, is developing processes, tools, and enable, you know, artists like Moneyman to be able to, you know, outpace some of the biggest artists in the world.
Are there ways that you're using tech that would surprise us?
I mean, of course. I mean, in the age of AI, right, you know, being able to create, you know, co-pilots, right, that enable creatives to be more efficient, right? Instead of working on 1 or 2 songs a day, you can work on 10, right? Things like that are going to be able to fuel the next generation of sound, in my opinion.
I mean, we're essentially a technology company, so we're using for technology for everything from accounting to finance to predictive methods for music consumption, what emerging markets look like, what genre diversification looks like from an accounting standpoint. And then we're also doing a lot of stuff like with generative AI, both in art, video, and we're building a lot of predictive tools that we're using in our A&R team for analytics and research. And I see a huge case use in the future also for the legal department, building a lot of machine learning tools where you can train our database to, you know, look for anomalies in contracts, look for bad data and correcting bad data. There's just a lot of moving parts in supply chain that people are not aware of. I mean, we're getting terabytes of data going out and coming in every month, right? Yeah. So everything from CSV files to large video files, it gets pretty elaborate, pretty extensive. And if you're not well refined on the tech side, you can find yourself in a big mess real quick.
You'll be surprised, honestly, on how some of the biggest music companies in the world are still running on dinosaur models. That's probably one of the first things that I've realized coming in this was, you know, technology as fast as music and tech is evolving like never before, right? You know, these tools essentially kind of, you know, bringing the music industry to current times.
Right now, we're spending a lot of time doing a Snowflake integration so that we could speed up all our databases, our analytics, our tables. And anybody who's here that knows that's like a data engineer understands that like columnizer databases and the data lakes and so on and so forth can dramatically shift what those processes look like. So there's also a learning delta for the music business because that's not fundamentally what the music business was built on.
So looking ahead next 5 years, what are some predictions you've got?
You know, personally, going back to the super fandom and going back to the way in which we're building, right? Providing tools for the people that are at ground surface level, right? That's going to open up these opportunities to, standardize the music industry. Our goal is to become the operating system of the music industry with the tools that we're creating. I believe that we're going to continue to move in the direction of independence. We're going to move in the direction of the super fandom. We're going to move in the direction of artists being their own small business, growing into major businesses.
I think the next 5 years is going to be really interesting. The rate of acceleration on technology is going to be something we've never seen before. We don't know what it looks like for intellectual property rights, trademark, likeness, copyright. What are these language models going to look like? How is it going to infiltrate the music business? If you want to have an interesting read, look up the Elvis Act in Tennessee. I think you lived in Tennessee.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of moving parts with legislation. And I think in the music business, the thing that's most interesting is that most legislation that we've adopted has been rooted in the music business of the last 75 years, of which most of it was developed in the Western world, that infrastructure, right? And then now we're on a completely new frontier where people are pioneering things in different segments of the world where maybe trademark and copyright look a little different to them. And things that we take for granted might look a little different for them. And I'm not saying what's right and what's wrong is that's a whole nother set of things that we don't want to get into on the stage because we could be up here forever. But it's going to be really interesting to see what all these rights look like, what dilution is going to look like in the music business when I can go on a computer and create 30 songs in 10 minutes. What is stream farming going to look like? What is fraud going to look like? What does super fandom look like? Is my 6-year-old daughter going to care if a human made the record or a computer made the record by the time she's 11 years old? What happens to the quote unquote soul of music? Is that even a thing? I think this is probably the greatest unknown that we've ever been confronted with in the music business. And I'd rather be on the front end of it and attack the changes and be on the front end of policy and on the front end of creation than be on the back end of it and have legislatures who maybe have no idea what the music business is about dictating to me what should be done with IP that I've spent almost half of my life working on, and people like him as well, who've, we're spending our lives striving for Grammys and accolades and Pulitzer Prizes and spending countless hours in the studio and signing artists and developing contracts. What is that all going to look like in 5 years? I don't think anybody has a real answer.
No, absolutely not. One of the more interesting conversations I had last year was with a group that had been trying to train models to create generative music. And they got to the point where they were actually just teaching music theory, to the model and doing it instrument by instrument, just so it would not use any copyrighted material. But at the end of the day, these models might still spit out something awfully similar to something else in the world. And then what does any of it mean?
And then what does that look like for publishing? I told someone the other day, I gave them an analogy. I said, I could take a picture of you and then I can clone you. Or I could look at your 23andMe data or your ancestry data and then clone that. What does that mean? From a UGC standpoint, what does that mean from a claiming standpoint with content ID systems? YouTube is about to go wide with DreamTrack. What does that look like? We're in the incubator with them. You could literally go on a computer and say, I want you to make a song that sounds like Prince, Purple Rain, but I want it to be Adele's voice and I want it to be a country rendition. And in 30 seconds, it can create it. And it's pretty spot on. What does that mean for music sync licensing? Do they need my records anymore for movies, TV shows, and video games? Or can they just hire a producer that can just sit there and prompt a computer to create things that fit the TV show? Just think that the upper echelon of music will be safe for a considerable period of time because you're not going to create the next Kendrick Lamar or the next Weeknd with a computer. But what does it look like in 10 years? It's an interesting question, interesting times. I think collectively as a society, we have a great responsibility and we have to figure out what it looks like.
Yeah. This has been so much fun. Thank you very much. I feel like we could have gone on for another half hour. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thanks so much.
This episode was produced by me and Emma Silicons and mixed by Garrett Lang, with original music from him and Jacob Gorski. Thanks for listening. I'm Jennifer Strong.
From PRX.